Welcome viewers to another very special episode of Your Britain. Yes, Your Britain every Monday 5 p.m. UK time only on Kanshi TV, broadcasting to over 180 countries around the globe. Yes, your number one channel, your number one program which is being watched around the world. So this evening's program, as you know, every week we have a special guest in the studio, and no changes for this week as well. We have a very special guest here in the studio with me. But just before I introduce you to that, let me remind you to please make sure you, your families, your loved ones are all safe during this COVID period as well. Wash your hands, keep your distance, and so on, and follow the government guidelines. I know we're easing up slowly, but we all have our own individual responsibilities, and to make sure that we maintain those responsibilities within our circles. So please make sure that you look after yourselves and your loved ones. Also, let me remind you, Your Britain every Friday, there's a repeat show 2 p.m. UK time. So for whatever reason, if you've missed this evening's program, not to worry, you can catch us on social media, Facebook, YouTube, and so many other Kanshi TV social media websites. And you can also catch me back on this repeat show on Friday 2 p.m. UK time. Right, as you also know, the elections are approaching on the 6th of May 2021. It's only, I believe so, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and then we're gonna all be going down to make sure we tick the right boxes. Yes, that's you heard me right. You got to make sure you do tick the right box. For that reason, we have a very special guest in the studio. If you remember, a couple of weeks before, we've had all the police, the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioners here. We've interviewed all of them. We've had Simon Foster from the Labour Party. We've also had John Hunt from the Liberal Democrats Party, and we've had Jay Singh a couple of weeks back from the Conservative Party. But today we've got an independent, yes, you've heard me right, an independent candidate who will be standing, a very well-known figure in our communities here in the West Midlands, particularly in Birmingham. I've known him for a very long time, and I believe that it's fair to also give a platform to my guest. As you probably would have guessed, this was on social media website anyway, so if you follow me on my Facebook, you probably know this evening guest is Desmond Jadoo. Yes, Desmond Jadoo, who will be standing for the local elections for the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner here in the West Midlands. Let me also give you a very brief description about Jadoo, who's been working very closely with all our communities, particularly from the BMA community for many years. We've had many issues within our ethnic minority communities, and he's always been in front line alongside many other colleagues and community activists who have been working here in the West Midlands. But no doubt, Desmond has done a great job. Now he wants to stand for the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner. What difference can he make? There's going to be many questions which I will be asking him. But just before I do that, I think it's very important and fair for me to just give him some figures. I'm sure he'll have some more figures, but I'll give you some figures. According to the Express and Star, going back in July 2020, West Midlands knife crime rate, yes, the second highest in the country. London was first, and nearly 3,500 knife crime offences. These are very brief figures I'm giving you, otherwise if I start giving you the facts and figures, we won't have time for the show. So basically, very briefly, I'm giving you these figures. Violent crime rate in Birmingham, 40% higher than the national average. Yes, you've heard me right, 40% higher than the national average. And also a couple of more figures going back in December 2020, ABS, which was 3,982, burglaries 1,708, robberies 615, vehicle crime 2,257, violence 12,650, shoplifting and other thefts 1,392, drugs 542, weapons 367, public order 2,385. In total, we're talking just coming to December 2020, nearly 29,000, nearly 30,000, 29,950 crimes. This is unbelievable. This is shocking, and it's ringing alarm bells through West Midlands, to be honest with you. What has the police and West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner been doing for the last 8 years? You all know we've had the Labour Party in control here in the West Midlands in terms of the Police and Crime Commissioner, which was David Jamieson. I have also the privilege of interviewing him about 15 months back. Many of you can see that on my Facebook and other social media channels. I had a 1 full hour interview with him regarding a particular subject. At that time, there was a knife crime increase in schools where children at the age of 13, 14, 15 were taking knives into schools, and that was a matter of urgency, and we invited him for a live interview. Anyway, nothing has been happening after that. I haven't heard anything back from him after that. We were recommendations were put forward to him, but nothing has ever been returned back. And I hope that if, God willing, we do elect Desmond Jadu, he will be back here. Whether he wins, it's not all about winning and losing. It's about putting yourself and challenging and making sure that you can provide the best for your communities. He will be back continuously to update us of what's happening in the West Midlands, particularly in Birmingham and the surrounding areas. So first and foremost, let me welcome my honourable guest, Desmond Jadu, independent candidate for the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner. Welcome to Your Britain, sir, and welcome to Kanshi TV, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Shazad, and thank you to Your Britain for having me on Kanshi TV. One little correction I need to make is that we've actually now formed our own political party, which is independent, called We Matter.
Okay.
So it is an independent political party. It's just been started.
Okay.
And we've done that because we need to galvanise, not just stand, but we need to galvanise people who want to make a difference in their local community as well.
Well, thanks very much for updating me on this. I wasn't aware of this, that you've just said you've created this party, We Matter. But before we actually talk about this We Matter, I have given you some facts and figures. There are many facts and figures which I can give you, but we don't just have the time to be honest with you. But I've given you a general idea of what's happening in the West Midlands, and let me just draw your attention to this as well. Going back to Birmingham Mail, 14 knife crimes a day in the West Midlands. This is Birmingham Evening Mail reporting on this. I'm sure you've probably seen this. 14 knife crimes a day. Again, alarm bells ringing here in Birmingham. Let me also draw your attention. 21 stabbings in Birmingham in 2020. 21 stabbings. That's more than enough, to be honest with you. One life, saving one life is saving the universe. Where you're losing 21 stabbings, and I've just been told by yourself before we went live on air that there was another stabbing that took place this afternoon, 2 o'clock. I wasn't aware of that as I've been travelling and then making my way to the studio. But we'll ask you about that in a couple of minutes. But let me just also draw your attention. Birmingham has the 72nd highest crime rate in the country, Desmond. These are facts and figures which are very concerning and worrying. Also, let me give you 4 areas here in Birmingham crime rate very briefly. In Walsall, we have 83.27. In Sandwell, 87.29. In Wolverhampton, 94.81. And in Birmingham, 97.75. These are just some of the figures. And the Guardian has reported in their front page that city has become unsafe, and also the Standard newspaper almost inevitable rise in violence. So these are just some of the facts and figures which I believe is very important to put in front of you and in front of our viewers, so they can get a gist of what's going on in the West Midlands. Right, first and foremost, a bit about yourself, Desmond. Why do you feel that you have the capability? I don't doubt you have the ability and the capability, but I'm sure I know that. But the millions of viewers who are watching around 180 countries and in the UK will probably want to know a bit about your background, sir.
First of all, let's look, what is the role of a police and crime commissioner? Because not many people actually recognise what the role is. And the role is to set the police and crime plan for the West Midlands. It is also to set the budget for policing for the West Midlands. And importantly, it's about holding the Chief Constable to account. Correct. Now, the first thing anyone who knows me knows, and I'm sure the Chief Constable knows this as well, that I do hold the West Midlands Police to account when it comes to trust and confidence, and when it also comes to community relations and community safety. Okay. Now, I'm a minister, I'm a family man, I'm a grandfather, I'm a campaigner for equality and social justice, and I work with all communities. It doesn't matter the colour of your skin. And importantly as well, one of the things I pride myself in is the truth. Because at the end of the day, if things aren't good, we say they're not good, so we can deal with them. Now, one statistic which has not been looked at is that this last week, West Midlands Police has been dubbed the worst performing police force in the country by the people of the West Midlands.
Exactly, I was going to ask you that in the question, but you've brought it up yourself
and
now.
And the facts are, at the end of the day, I'm not here to knock police officers who are working hard.
They're doing an excellent job.
Because there are some police officers out there working really well.
Of course.
And the facts are, what we have to look at is this: how do we support them? And remember as well, we always hear the buzzwords, the police are the community and the community the police. But the facts are, at the end of the day, how are we reflecting that? We've got a lack of reflective governance. We have a police force that does not look like the people it's supposed to be serving. We keep hearing we need to address this. We need to address governance, the glass ceiling that exists in policing. But clearly, policing has become irrelevant when we look at what's happening in our streets.
Let me very briefly, I mean, there are many questions. As I said, it's going to be very difficult to go through 30 or 40 questions within an hour. But very briefly, I'm also going to come on to your first 100 days pledge. But just before I do that, many people who are watching us probably thinking, you know, we got the three major political parties who are standing in the elections on the 6th of May 2021 here in the West Midlands. Why should we support and vote for an independent candidate? What difference will he make, which the other three candidates from the main political parties won't make? I mean, you know, many people have got this question, and when we don't have an independent research, my production team and myself, you know, we conduct a very brief and a very quick research, and people were saying, well, why should we support somebody independently? But at the same time, let me question you. You have been supporting the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, who's been in 2 terms, he's been in office. What has he done? So, you know, we have to draw a line, and we have to be very fair to our independent candidates as well. They have the same right to stand as candidates. Of course, they may have different policies, different pledges, and so on. So let's hear directly from Desmond, why would want to vote you, sir, on the 6th of May?
It's time for change. One thing COVID has shown me, it's time for change.
Okay.
We've seen the political rhetoric. One of the things the late Bob Jones said, which was a good commissioner, Bob said that politics should not be brought into policing.
Okay.
Now, policing your community is not about politics. It's about safety. It's about equality. It's about justice. Now, clearly, I've already been on hustings where I've heard candidates say, well, when you're elected a mayor from the same party. This is about working with the people to make our communities and the streets of our communities safer. With me, the difference I bring, I'm already doing things.
Okay.
I've been doing things without resources, and we've been making a difference. Indeed, we know knife crime is on the rise. But last week, we announced we took 150 knives off our streets. Now, that's significant. And what I'm saying is, I don't need to have special meetings to discuss what's needed. We know what's needed, but we will still talk to the public. Building community relations, that's what we need to be doing. What we also need to be doing is building greater capacity. You know, instead of arguing about the fact that 44 police stations have closed, another 26 lined up, one blames the Labour PCC, the other one blames the Conservative government. Let's just say, listen, how do we resolve this? How do we deal with this? How do we get our police officers back into the community to keep our streets safer? And that it's developing that understanding without the political rhetoric. People are bored of political rhetoric now, you know, and that's the thing. We need to refocus upon what the role is there to do, which is to serve the people of the West Midlands, and also as well to build that bridge. And let me make it crystal clear. When I say build that bridge, build the bridge between the people and the police. One thing I need to point out, the Police and Crime Commissioner is not a police officer. The Police and Crime Commissioner is there to advocate for the people, to ensure that the police are getting it right when it comes to policing our community.
Let me also remind viewers, the phone lines are open. This is a live broadcast going out. As I said, Scott, the number is 0300 770 2246 0121 502 4304. All the numbers are displayed on your screen. I do apologize in advance if I'm not taking your calls. That does not mean that I'm trying to ignore you. The matter of fact is I have to get through so many questions, and I want to give the priority to Desmond to make sure, and the priority to our viewers to make sure that he can answer as many questions as possible. But the text messages are also open. I am getting text messages and emails coming through. I promise you that I will read your messages and emails very shortly. Right, Desmond, coming back to that, there are many issues within the police force, something which has been highlighted for many years. One of them is racism in the force. Yeah. I think many people want to hear from an independent candidate what's going on. Let me just remind you, I can give you many examples, but I'm just only going to give you one example. Millions of people have seen this on social media and Facebook a couple of months back, where there was I believe 13-year-old school lad who was pinned against a wall in Newtown by a police officer. Yep. I'm sure you remember that, you will recall that. As I said, there are hundreds of examples which I can give you, but I'm only sticking to that one example. What's going on within the force? We cannot accept this. I mean, no community should be accepting this, particularly the taxpayers who are paying for the police officers and for other services here in the West Midlands, in fact around the country, and then we see 13-year-old children pinned against a wall and beaten by police officers. We've seen many incidents where police has been racist. We've seen many incidents where police are provoking people, but let me at the same time remind you, viewers, that there are fantastic police officers out there who are doing a great job for our community, and without them we'd be lost. That's simple as that, you know, without the law and order. But there are always bad apples, alongside the which spoil it for everybody else. So can I draw your attention to that question? Do you believe again that there is racism within the force?
Unfortunately, yes, and I do say unfortunately.
Okay.
The young man's mom in that video, I did speak to her, and she was absolutely mortified. But we must remember at that period of time, I think it was between last year, February 2020 and April 2020, there were 4 incidences involving the same police officer.
Correct.
What we discovered was that officer has been suspended and he's facing charges following an IOPC investigation. However, the thing is, there was a failure to supervise on the side of the police, because what we found out is that when the officers fill in use of force forms, their body cam footage was not being viewed to marry it up to that. We've changed that. And that's the difference that someone like me brings, because we highlight the issue and we get the issue addressed. In terms of what we then discovered is that on all four occasions the victims were black. And I do use the phrase victims and the term victims because that's what they are victims. Okay. Importantly, when we look at the actions of the police against members of what I call the minority community, I don't use the term BAME.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And one of the things is, at the end of the day, the minority community, overnight becomes the majority community when it comes to disproportional action. Disproportional issues surrounding the use of taser, stop and search, use of baton, use of spit hoods, use of Section 136 of the Mental Health Act. Now, clearly, I've sat on scrutiny panels over the years, and I've always asked the one question: why is it that you stop members of the minority community, right? A majority of them, why do you stop them for smell of cannabis, and when the search happens, there's nothing found and they're on their way? Okay. That's just one example, but it's a case of we can't keep talking about it. Last year we had the issue of George Floyd, everyone was taking one knee. It's time now for us to stand tall, bring on the changes and deal with these issues, because these issues, we've been talking about them, Shazad. We've been talking about them 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You know, it's 2021. Are we going to be talking about them in 2031?
Desmond, let me just, because obviously this is an element of trust now we're talking,
sure.
Right? I mean, trusting in police, you've made yourself very clear that there are very good police officers, but there are certain police officers who spoil it for everybody else. Now, God willing, if you're elected on the 6th of May, how will you address this issue of trust within the policing service?
First thing, we have to address the issues that are there, and one of the things I want to set up is public forums in terms of a police and crime plan.
Excellent.
But also as well, what I want to do in that public forum is address the issue of trust and confidence and build into that police plan zero tolerance. Okay. Zero tolerance in terms of incivility, zero tolerance in terms of racism, assessing patterns of behaviour. But also as well, at the same time as well, we have to have zero tolerance in terms of the public as well. Because we've got to be balanced in what we do.
Of course,
but importantly, the public will not be ignored. I mean, one of the biggest issues that I've always found is when I hear someone say to someone, "Are you stopping me because I'm black, or are you stopping me because I'm Asian?" They say, "Here we go, you're playing the race card." That tells me that there's blatant disrespect. And that should not be happening. But clearly, trust and confidence is essential, because remember, in this country, we have policing by consent. And if there is no trust and confidence, how on earth are you expected to police?
Correct.
And importantly as well, with what's happening on our streets, remember, this election is all about building communities. It's all about safer streets. It's all about women, children, men, our elders feeling safe. Right now, many of them do not feel safe. So what we now need to do is address these issues head on. We can't be putting small plasters over gaping holes anymore. That's what's been happening over a number of years. I know this by experience. We've held the public forums after murders. We've held the public forums after disturbances.
No output.
And the facts are, at the end of the day, I remember providing a report to the police with 100 points on it. And I will tell you this, nothing happens.
Exactly.
One of the things I bring is that I'm doing things already. We are making things happen. We do work with community partners. When I said we got in 150 knives, we announced that last week, that was working with Green Lane Mosque. That was working with Cannon Street Baptist Church in Soho Road, for example. We are working with people to make a difference, but importantly, the people who are going to make the difference here are the public. On the 6th of May, they have to vote for me, and I will promise them one thing now: they will be able to name who I am as Police and Crime Commissioner. Go out there right now and ask a lot of people, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner? I'm sure they won't be able to name him.
Of course. Right, Desmond, let me just draw your attention, to a couple of crimes which are highly taking places here in the West Midlands. I know there are many, as I said, due to time I can't go through every single crime, but I'm going to be basically questioning you on knife crime, youth crime, and also domestic abuse. First of all, let me start with the knife crime. You've just informed me just before we went on a couple of minutes ago that there was another incident which took place 2 p.m. today, which I'm not aware of, but it took place here in Birmingham, Handsworth, I believe.
Park,
Handsworth Park, you said. I mean, this is just unacceptable now. Knife crime, particularly in schools, is rising. Knife crime has become a normality of our communities. What's going on, Desmond? This needs to stop, and it needs to stop immediately.
Look, our streets at the moment on the verge of being lost. Last week we had a lot of bloodshed on our streets. In 48 hours there were several attacks, both gun and knives, and then today this knife attack again, which has happened in Handsworth Park. For many years now we've been talking to the police regarding knife crime education, which my organisation, Yes to Life, we were delivering to some schools. We believe that knife crime education surrounding youth violence should start at the age of 5.
Correct.
In terms of a very soft approach, but also as well working with parents. Over the years I've talked about a joined up approach. It doesn't matter how much input we put into young people. If they go home and the parents aren't on board, we're back to square one.
Okay.
We really need that all-important, what I call joined up approach. Some call it a public health approach, but it's beyond that. We need what we call a safer streets approach. And one of the things I intend to do in my immediately, if I'm elected, is to set up a task force to start dealing with this immediately, because we are going to have, in my view, and what I'm hearing, a very, very disturbing summer, and we don't want that. We have to deal with it. And I think what's happened over the past 7 years, we've had a lot of meetings, a lot of conferences, but no tangible action, no real tangible outcome. Knife crime is out of control. Gun crime is out of control. Youth violence is out of control. What we've got to do is get to the causational issues and deal with them. Right now what's happening is this, Shazad. We now have the police playing catch up. They go in, someone sadly dies, loses their life, it causes mass grief and trauma on families. Also remember as well the perpetrator's family. Only last week, some young men got sentenced to nearly 30 years in prison for murder. And when they're looking at parole, they're going to be over 50 years old. That impacts upon their families as well.
Yeah,
so we mustn't forget that. Now, when we look at the overall picture, we need to get to the causational issues. Because what happens is they go to prison, the other person's died,
correct,
but we just
destroyed.
wait for the next one to happen.
Of course.
We can't do that. We have to be working affirmatively to deal with this. But also as well, it's not about the characters anymore. It's about the cause. It's about the cause. So we need to be working together.
As in terms of community, you've mentioned that you'll be setting up, if you're, God willing, elected on the 6th of May, you'll be setting up forums where people can approach you direct. I think that is the main information that people want to hear from yourself before
Sure.
the election, because what we tend to see is once people are elected, whether it's the Metro Mayors or whether it's the police commissioners, you have to go through, God knows, maybe 10 different people to
Sure.
approach or speak to the individual. I mean, not in my case, you know, you
Sure.
know, but generally in general people's cases, that is exactly what happens. You see what I mean? So people are fed up now that when they elect somebody, they are waiting and waiting and waiting to speak to the person that they have voted for and elected
Right.
for. And that is something, when we conducted our research, people were saying, well, it doesn't really matter who we vote or don't vote, because at the end of the day, we never get to see them anyway. We have to go through maybe 5, 10 people, 50 emails, God knows what, and still at the end of the day, we do not meet the individual who we voted and got elected, our representative. If you're elected, what promise are you making today, live on TV today, with millions of viewers across the world and millions here in the UK watching? This is a very highly rated program. Your Britain, people from all backgrounds come here. We talk about all issues, discussing issues that really reflect and affect all our communities. And you probably have seen many of my programs on Facebook and on TV, that we have people coming from all backgrounds to make sure that these are the issues that are really affecting us, and not shove them under the carpet. In fact, talk about them. So it's your chance to reach out to millions of viewers, that if you're elected on 6th of May, or God forbid if you're not elected, are you there for the people of West Midlands? Are you there for the people of Birmingham?
I'm already here. That's the first thing. Secondly, I already do surgeries and take phone calls. One of the things that I pledged to do in my first 100 days is actually to have PCC surgeries.
Okay, excellent.
Bring them back. Every month, every fortnight, we haven't decided yet. The locations, we haven't decided yet. Let's get into office, but that's my pledge. Importantly, I'm not going to be available to speak to all in excess of 3 million people
of course,
in the West Midlands. However, I would put together a team, and I would ensure during those surgery I have available time as well. But importantly, this is about access and building bridges. How on earth am I going to hold the Chief Constable to account if I don't know what the feelings are? And you know, you can go through third parties, but it would be good to hear that from individuals themselves. When Bob Jones was Commissioner, he did have surgeries. They stopped with the current Commissioner.
Okay.
They need to happen because we need to have that connectivity. And the most important reason for that is this. The public are the ones that hold me to account. Okay. And I should be open, transparent, and accountable to them.
Let me also ask you about attracting more officers. That's something which is really a concern for other ethnic minorities or the BMA community, that there are many officers who apply to become police officers, because you see advertisements going out on all sorts of websites that we're looking for police officers in the West Midlands and in fact around the country. But when it comes to the first stage, they might be accepted, and when it comes to stage 2, 3, 4, they are refused. And this is, you know, we've spoken to people who have applied directly, and those are, and many of you will see in the coming weeks and months, who will be discussing their process and applications with the police and so on. So basically, people from the ethnic minorities, Desmond, are being completely put off by not joining the West Midlands or any of the police forces.
Sure.
What's the reality in that, sir?
It is a harsh reality because we do hear, well, first thing, applications are always low. So we have to remember that. The applications are low. And of those low applications, what you then get, you get a very, very high fallout rate. Yet again, the word disproportional. And I would carry out a review of recruitment and selection. However, many people as well, to drive up applications. We want to have a specially target program to bring in special constables. Try before you buy, for example.
Okay.
People who have spare time, join the specials, see if you can make a difference. If it is for you, then we'll fast track an application.
You're referring to the PCOs now, ain't you?
No, not the PCOs, okay, special constables.
Right, okay, viewers, just get that very clear. So Desmond is referring to special constables. For those viewers who don't know the difference, can you very briefly explain?
Yeah, special constables, basically, they wear a police uniform.
Okay.
They're not full-time police officers, but they are volunteers.
Okay, correct.
So if you've got a couple of days free per month, you can become a special constable.
And they have the same rights as the police officers and so on, or is that?
They still can arrest someone,
okay,
but they're not actually a police officer, not on the payroll.
Okay.
But importantly,
okay,
they can be there to patrol our streets with PCSOs,
okay,
with police officers. But importantly, as I've said, if they can make a difference, then we fast track their application to become full-time police officers.
So that's the way of putting your foot in.
This is targeting members of the minority communities and also women as well. Yeah. Because remember, with the issues that we face with women at the moment, in terms of women's safety, for example, we need more female police officers as well.
Excellent news. I think people would really take advantage of that. So put your foot in the door by applying as special constables and then start making your way up from there. Right, let me just address you to two other crimes which I believe are very important here in the West Midlands. Gun crime. As you briefly touched upon that, we've touched upon knife. Gun crime is something which is just totally shocking. It's just gone out of the roof, to be honest with you. People are taking this as a joke, particularly of a younger generation. It's just like, you know, playing with toys, to be honest with you. If you're elected, what will you do in the first instance of resolving the gun crime issue, particularly with our youngsters? Because it's very, very difficult to handle our youngsters or speak to them, or educate them, to be honest with you. As for parents, let me draw your attention. When it comes to drugs, when it comes to gun crime. Unfortunately, sadly, I've done many programs on this. In fact, a couple of weeks I did a program that if your child, God forbid, or anybody's child, or my child, it could be anybody's child, if their salary is £40,000 a year on average, which is a very good salary, I don't think many youngsters are on that salary, but I've given you the top end of scale. If somebody's on £40,000 and you see your children, I don't know, driving vehicles which are worth over 100,000, I don't know, probably the shirts or God knows trousers or trainers are worth £500 or £1,000. Of course, bells should be ringing within the family. But unfortunately, let me just very clearly explain this. It's not 100% the police that is always in fault. It's our communities, particularly our parents, who take zero responsibility. Desmond, this is absolutely the truth, and this is not in every single family. Let me make this clear. Not in every single community, but majority of the parents, they know exactly what the children are doing, but when you speak to them or when you try to indicate or pinpoint and say, look, what's going on here? Oh, we don't know, we're not interested. But deep down, they're very interested when bags of lump sum cash is coming in the house, and so on. And we've discussed this program with many scholars, religious scholars as well, in terms of religious perspective of what their outcome is. So, let's make this absolutely clear. Yes, we see very easy to point the finger at the police, to the authorities, but at the end of the day, put your house in order first. Right, coming back to our question, gun crime, sir, is another issue.
Gun crime is a major issue, but one of the things you have to understand, Shajad, is this. Youngsters now carrying weapons, be it a gun or knife, to some it's just like putting on the trainers.
Exactly, that's what I said. It's a joke. It's become a joke.
And that's the thing. They do that. Some may do it for status. Some do it for safety. Some are now doing it for safety because they will say, well, if I go down the road and I see so-and-so and they come after me,
that shouldn't be the case,
I'm going to get them before they get me. A part of our Safer Streets concept, taking on board what you've said previously, is that complete joined up approach in terms of dealing with everything. You can't deal with the young people in isolation. You can't deal with the community in isolation. You can't deal with the parents in isolation. You can't deal with the environment and the socio-economic factors in isolation either. There was a report from the retiring Chief Constable of Merseyside Police who said that he would take a proportion of his budget if he had his time again to deal with poverty. Because poverty isn't just giving people money, it's educating. Because as you've just rightly said, if let's look at the other end of the scale. If someone's on universal credit and their son or daughter comes home with £200 trainers on, an alarm bell should ring. And you are right. But at the end of the day, also, where is the support to help that parent deal with it? And that's where the issue is. Now, the police aren't social workers. However, our Safer Streets panel that we want to set up would include the appropriate agencies to assist in dealing with that. And that's what we call the joined up approach, much beyond the public health approach.
Let me also draw your attention to another very serious crime which has been unraved, particularly during COVID. And also, yes, I've got the producer, we've got the phone lines that are absolutely going mad. Please, viewers, just bear with me. I've got a couple of more very important questions, and I promise you, if I do have time left at the end, I will take 1 or 2 calls. I've got text messages and emails coming through, but I feel it's very important to get through these questions first. So please bear with me, and I'll make sure I can attend a few calls if I possibly can, but not promising you anything at this moment. Let me draw your attention to domestic abuse, Desmond.
Sure.
Domestic abuse, straight away when you say domestic abuse, people think, yeah, it's probably associated with other females in other communities and so on, but the reality is domestic abuse can happen to anyone, particularly our male fellows. But the problem is because of ego and because of I'm a man, and it's going to be very difficult for me to go and express my views and opinions. But domestic abuse at the moment is happening very highly in the male dominant rather than the female at this particular moment, going to some of the stats and figures that we have. But anyway, generally speaking, domestic violence, if you're elected on the 6th of May, what assurance are you giving to all the victims right across the board?
Right across the board, it says in our first 100 days, we'll set up varying charters.
I'll be coming to you 100 days in a second.
We're talking about a charter for women, a charter for children and young people, a charter for men, a race charter and a faith charter. Encapsulated into that, we talk about victims, we talk about domestic abuse, particularly we focus on women and the sad murder of Sarah Everard. Of course. Clearly, there needs to be a greater emphasis placed on that. I've had people contact me about men and say that, the issues that men face at times are played down. Now, if we look at that, mental health, addiction in terms of alcohol, in terms of drugs, is that feeding the causational factors in terms of domestic violence and domestic abuse in the home? We've got some other cases where sadly some women do use some men in terms as slaves, for example, particularly men who come into the UK from overseas and they have no status. But there are men that exploit women in that way as well. Of course. So it's a two-way traffic. It's a two-way traffic, but the whole purpose of these charters is to hear from not just professionals, not just academics, not just organisations, but victims. Because we want to know what their experiences are. We need to know what the telltale signs are so that intervention can take place and deal with this. Because remember one thing, Shazad, in terms of financing, policing, prevention, my mother always told me prevention's better than cure. Now, importantly, it's far cheaper to be proactive than it is to be reactive. And one of the things is, on the 6th of May, if elected Police and Crime Commissioner for the West Midlands, you will have a Police and Crime Commissioner's office that is proactive. Okay.
Right, now we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I think it's very important to go through some of your literature which is being published. You've just basically informed me that you've organised or curated, I would say, We Matter. Now, very briefly, could you explain what is We Matter and what does it do and what's its role and objectives?
We Matter is a registered political party, and we seek to level the playing field and create greater and easier access into politics, because politics controls a good proportion of our lives. Even if you don't engage, politicians are making decisions for us. Importantly, there is that disconnect. And also as well, we've got career politicians who are politicians for 30, 40, 50 years. Where is the access for young blood? Where's the access for new ideas? And one thing, we are now registered with the Electoral Commission. And one of the things is, we are preparing ourselves to fight elections locally, not just across the West Midlands, not just in Birmingham, but nationally. At this election, we've got myself standing for Police and Crime Commissioner here in the West Midlands, and we've got someone standing in a council by-election in Enfield. Now, next year, we hope to have several more candidates. We're already having...
For the local elections?
For local elections, yes. We've already got expressions of interest for that.
Okay.
Because we are in this time of change, and the old political rhetoric doesn't work anymore. Finger pointing, political parties fighting. We've seen what's happening in COVID. We've seen the issues surrounding spin. We've seen the major loss of life. We've seen the health inequalities that we've been talking about for years, Sajjad, particularly in the Black African Caribbean community and the Asian community, the South Asian community, which have always been ignored. And that's exacerbated the impact on COVID upon our communities. And what we need to be doing is levelling that playing field of equality.
Right, just before we end our program, let me very briefly go through some of your pledges. I mean, you've got the first 100-day pledge, which looks absolutely fantastic here in front of me. But let me just very briefly highlight some of these. The first one is to commence the development of women's charter, to commence the development of men's charter, to commence the development of children's charter, to commence the public consultation on policing priorities, commence the recruitment of special constables to reflect the communities that they serve, commence on OPCC surgeries, set up safer street panels, development of faith charter, to commence the development of race charter, the urgent setting up of a task force to deal with ongoing tensions, particularly during summer, appointment of non-political local authority commissioners, and appoint of functional assistant commissioners to target key areas. Right, these are, I had to go through very quickly due to time, but these are your first 10-day pledges, which seem absolutely very fair, to be honest with you, particularly 2 or 3 points which I feel are very important in them, coming back to the development of race charter and also appointment of non-political local authority commissioners and appointment of functional assistant commissioners to target key areas. Do you want to emphasize on just those 2 or 3 points? We only have about 4 minutes, sir.
Right. In terms of local authority commissioners, each local authority area would have a commissioner.
Okay.
And those commissioners, We Matter Party is a small party. So we want people who are capable of becoming commissioners and who can actually deliver. So it's not about your political colours.
Okay.
This is about your capability.
Okay.
Importantly as well, when we talk about functional commissioners, the charters are charters that will be developed that need to be implemented, monitored and reviewed every 12 months. What's working well, we build upon. What's not working, we deal with. For example, we'd have a commissioner to look at safer streets. They would oversee safer streets. There's a stabbing in Handsworth Park today. Where's anyone from an authority? Where's someone from the Police and Crimes Commission's office? Just to go have a look and see what's going on. Also as well, a commissioner to oversee policing, trust and confidence, inequality, as you've mentioned, racism, also as well recruitment. So that's 3 functional assistant commissioners to actually deal with issues head on that impact upon our daily lives.
Desmond, just before we say have a goodbyes, your final message. That's Desmond Jadu, standing for the West Midlands Police and Crime Commission elections taking place on the 6th of May 2021. As I said, I've got many other questions which you can see in front of me. I haven't got any more time. I just have 2 minutes and I'll be the end of the show. So your final message going out to millions of viewers who are watching this, why should they support you and vote for you on the 6th of May? And you have approximately 40 seconds, sir.
Right, I'm local. I've been local for a number of years. We've been making a difference without being in any official office, and we continue to make a difference. Now, the difference that you have to make is this. On the 6th of May, if you want things to remain as they are, continue with your own voting pattern or stay at home, whichever one. But if you want change, then go out and vote, and you've only got one vote to make, and that's a vote for me, because at the end of the day, we will bring about the changes. Anyone who knows me on the campaign trail, we are no nonsense, and we stand for equality and social justice because we believe that everyone should be treated fairly, and we need a just and equitable police service that has the trust and confidence of all the communities, and importantly as well, a police and crime commissioner that doesn't hide away, that is accessible, and that you can hold to account.
Desmond Jedu, it was a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much for coming onto Your Britain. Thank you very much for coming onto Kanshi TV. Many thanks. I wish you all the best on the 6th of May 2020. If you're elected, you'll be definitely back here with myself. If you're not elected, I promise you, and I'm sure you've promised everybody, you'll be back here fighting the causes, and we'll always make sure that we're in contact through the airwaves, reaching out to our viewers. On those words, thank you very much. You've you had the final interview of the police and crime commissioners. You've had all the party political individuals who've been here. Today you've had the independent candidate Desmond Jedu, and those will thank you very much. Look after yourself, your family, your loved ones. Please make sure your COVID rules and regulations, the government guidelines, make sure you follow them as well. If you have missed this program for whatever reason, not to worry, you can see the repeat on Friday 2 p.m. UK time on Sky Channel 772. Other than that, I will see you same time, same place next Monday 5 p.m. in Your Britain. Look after yourselves, look after your loved ones. Till then, bye bye, love you all, see you next week.